The snow fell quietly on the city park, each flake catching the warm glow of the streetlights that had just begun to flicker on in the early evening. Sarah Mitchell sat on the wooden bench, her cream-colored coat wrapped tightly around her as she watched the peaceful scene unfold before her. The park was nearly empty, save for a few late joggers and dog walkers hurrying home before the snow grew heavier. Sarah had come here to think, as she often did when the weight of her responsibilities felt too heavy to carry. As the CEO of a marketing firm, her days were filled with meetings, decisions, and the constant pressure to succeed. At 34, she had achieved everything she had ever dreamed of professionally. Her corner office overlooked the city, her bank account was healthy, and her reputation in the business world was solid. Yet sitting here in the gentle snowfall, she felt an emptiness that no amount of success could fill. She pulled her phone from her purse to check the time, then slipped it back without reading the messages that had undoubtedly accumulated during her brief escape from the office. The cold air felt good against her cheeks, and for a moment, she allowed herself to simply breathe and watch the snow dance in the amber light. That's when she noticed the small figure approaching through the falling snow. A little girl, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, walked slowly along the path. She wore a brown coat that looked slightly too big for her small frame, and her dark hair was dusted with snowflakes. What struck Sarah most was how carefully the child moved, as if she were looking for something or someone. The little girl stopped a few feet away from Sarah's bench and stood there quietly, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Sarah could see that the child's cheeks were pink from the cold, and her eyes held a mixture of shyness and determination that touched something deep in Sarah's heart. "Hello there," Sarah said gently, offering a warm smile. "Are you waiting for someone?" The little girl took a small step closer, clutching something in her hands. Sarah could see now that it was a small stuffed bear, worn and clearly well loved. The child's eyes met Sarah's briefly before looking down at her feet. "My daddy said I could play in the park while he talks to his friend over there," the little girl said, pointing toward a coffee shop across the street where Sarah could see 2 men engaged in what appeared to be a serious conversation through the steamy windows. "That's nice," Sarah replied, scooting over slightly on the bench. "Would you like to sit down? You must be getting cold out there in the snow." The little girl nodded and climbed up onto the bench beside Sarah, her short legs swinging freely. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both watching the snow continue to fall around them. "I'm Emma," the little girl said suddenly, hugging her teddy bear closer to her chest. "It's very nice to meet you, Emma. I'm Sarah." She paused, then added, "That's a beautiful bear you have there." Emma looked down at her stuffed animal and smiled for the first time. "His name is Chocolate because he's brown like chocolate chips. My mama gave him to me when I was little." Sarah noticed the way Emma said, "Mama," and felt a gentle tug in her chest. There was something wistful in the child's voice, a longing that Sarah recognized even though she couldn't quite place why. "Tell me about your mama," Sarah said softly, sensing that Emma wanted to share. Emma's small face grew thoughtful, and she was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "I don't have a mama anymore. She went to heaven when I was 4. Daddy says she's watching over me, but sometimes I forget what her voice sounds like." The words hit Sarah like a gentle wave, washing over her with unexpected emotion. She had to swallow hard before she could respond. "I'm so sorry, Emma. That must be very difficult for you." "Sometimes it is," Emma admitted, her voice small but matter-of-fact in the way that children often are about difficult truths. She looked up at Sarah with curious eyes. "Do you have a mama?" "I do," Sarah said, thinking of her own mother who lived several states away and whom she spoke to perhaps once a month in hurried phone calls between meetings. "But I don't see her very much because I work a lot." Emma seemed to consider this information carefully. Then, in a voice so quiet that Sarah had to lean closer to hear her over the gentle whisper of falling snow, Emma asked, "I don't have a mama, can I spend a day with you, ma'am?" The question was asked with such pure innocence and hope that Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. She looked down at this small, brave little girl who had just asked for something so simple yet so profound, and felt something shift inside her chest. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Sarah asked gently. "Well," Emma said, turning on the bench to face Sarah more directly, "sometimes I see other kids with their mamas, and they do fun things together. Like go to the park, or get ice cream, or read stories. I thought maybe you might like to do those things too, just for one day." If you want to, I mean. Sarah felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. This little girl's request was so heartfelt, so genuine, that it made Sarah realize how long it had been since anyone had simply wanted to spend time with her, not for business, not for networking, but just for the joy of being together. I would love that very much, Emma, Sarah said, her voice warm with sincerity. But we should probably ask your daddy first, don't you think? Emma's face lit up with a smile that seemed to make the falling snow sparkle brighter. Really? You really want to spend a day with me? I really do, Sarah confirmed, and as she said it, she realized how much she meant it. In fact, I can't think of anything I'd rather do. They sat together on the bench, planning what their special day might include. Emma suggested the zoo, and maybe lunch at a place with good grilled cheese sandwiches. Sarah found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in weeks as Emma described all the animals she wanted to see and how she would introduce Sarah to each one. When Emma's father finally emerged from the coffee shop and called to her, both Sarah and Emma felt reluctant to end their conversation. As Emma slipped down from the bench, she turned back to Sarah with a serious expression on her small face. "Thank you for talking to me," she said. "And for wanting to spend a day with me. I think you might be a really good mama." The words settled in Sarah's heart like warm sunshine. As she watched Emma run across the street to meet her father, she realized that this chance encounter had given her something she hadn't even known she was missing. The little girl who had no mama had somehow filled a mama-shaped hole in Sarah's own heart. Sarah remained on the bench for a few more minutes, watching as Emma pointed excitedly in her direction while talking to her father. She could see the man looking over at her with curiosity and what appeared to be gratitude. Tomorrow, she decided, she would clear her calendar. She would take a day off from being a CEO and instead spend it being exactly what Emma had asked her to be. As the snow continued to fall around her, Sarah felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. Sometimes, she thought, the most important meetings are the ones that happen by chance on a snowy evening in the park. Sometimes, the most meaningful connections are formed not in boardrooms, but on simple wooden benches where two hearts recognize their need for each other. The city lights twinkled through the falling snow as Sarah finally stood to leave, already looking forward to tomorrow and the gift of spending a day seeing the world through the eyes of a little girl who had reminded her what truly mattered.